Oh.
Clearly.
What a piece of junk!
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1, episode 126. You can find us on youtube.com/2for1 Studios, the best place to consume the content. Of course, you can also find us on all podcast services like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and so much more. My name is Donovan Thompson. This is my co-host.
I'm Daniel Wing. I'm sorry. I stepped all over your introduction all there. I am Daniel Wingfield.
He is Daniel Wingfield. It's okay. I fucked up the opening thing. I think it's the first time in like 100 episodes where you can't fully hear the opening.
Yep.
That's my fault. It
Yeah.
happens.
I think we're done. I think that wraps it up then. This will be the last podcast.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do. So
We've peaked, as they say. And if you didn't know, and I bet you didn't, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Kill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. There they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year.
Kapow.
Daniel, it's episode 126 of Podcast 2 for 1, and we are celebrating that milestone by talking Miss Marvel. We did talk about the first, I think, 3 episodes a couple weeks back.
Yes.
But now all 6 have dropped on Disney Plus, and we are here to deliver all the thoughts that we have on the show. You might have to help me a little bit. It's been a few weeks since the season finale, and I am very curious as to your thoughts on it, and I would love for you to go first.
Okay. Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel is an interesting show because I think for me at the end of the day, it's fine. It's a fine show. It's not the worst thing. In some ways, it's still better than some of the stuff we've had in Star Wars recently. But it's also, there's nothing about it that really excites me. And I think part of that is that this show is definitely aimed at younger people than me. And that's, maybe this is the first time since I've been watching the MCU where I'm watching something that really doesn't feel like I'm the targeted demo, right? And that's fine. I think that the MCU is big enough to cater to different demographics. But it's also just, for me personally, an interesting feeling because it's in a world that I like. I like the MCU. It's progressing that, and especially, kind of the end reveal of the final episode, it does something pretty interesting, at least in theory. But at the same time, this world just feels so much less real. I feel like the world that Miss Marvel exists in the show feels like Disney Channel show a bit. And I get, it's Disney making it, so very good reason, I guess. But I feel like this almost had like That's So Raven energy without the laugh track or like the sarcasm as heavy. The villains were a mess and really felt like they didn't know what they wanted to do with anyone. The exposition heavy segments in episode 4 and 5 were a bit of a slog to get through. Kamala Khan, while I do think she has some better moments in the latter half of the season, I think for the most part still doesn't just feel like just a super real character to me. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's an interesting thing. It's like I don't want to criticize it too hard. I don't want to be like, oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Because a lot of this stuff is maybe connecting to people that I am not. But I do think that I don't know. I think there is a way to do both. I think there is a way to appeal to younger audiences while still dealing with a little bit more. It's dealing with mature themes, but it's dealing with them kind of immaturely, is how I feel the show does. It never takes itself very seriously. And I wish it did that more. So it's a bit of a word salad there, but that's kind of my initial thoughts.
No, I mean, I kind of agree with everything you said. Looking at it right here on Rotten Tomatoes, there's a lot of articles been going around saying like this is the best reviewed Marvel property ever. It's sitting at 98% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, which is also weird just because to kind of say those kind of claims because like Thor: Love and Thunder example probably has roughly a big blockbuster like that has like 300 plus reviews. Let's see. It's got 388 reviews. And so it has a bigger like hill to climb, but basically, right? And it's sitting at 67%.
Mm-hmm.
Fun facts. TV
Mm-hmm.
show reviews typically have way less people review them, but
Yes.
you're right. This it's not really for me demographic wise. We even saw this a little bit in the end of for me Thor: Love and Thunder, or like the kids get powers, and it was kind of like that's just not fun for me. Like I don't think that's cool or
Yeah.
anything like that. So I'm sure there's kids in the audience who like love that and like, oh, I could be Thor too someday. I get that, but even as a kid, for me, and I think if you've been listening to the podcast or if you know me privately, even as a kid, I've never been a fan of I was never a fan of superhero kids. I never was. Like
Mm.
as a 10-year-old, I was like, no, I want Spider-Man, not Spider-Man in high
Mm.
school. Like and
Mm.
I've always been that way. Oh, I don't want, Robin. I'm more open to Robin now as an
Sure.
adult, funny enough, than I was when as a kid. I fucking hated Robin. I was like, this is stupid
Mm.
as a kid. But anyway, you know, I think the highlights to this are the family dynamic. Like, I love the parents. I feel like
Yeah.
they go on more
Yeah.
of an arc than she does, and her arc. I mean, her arc is the classic
Yes.
origin thing where she's finding out who she is or who she can be, right, through these powers. But I don't I don't know 100% if what she's doing or what these powers are giving her the ability to do are reinforcing like, oh, this is what kind of character Kamala is. I
No.
feel like she was kind of already that character in the beginning, right? She
It
already kind of
is. No,
was.
it's you're right. It is like the journey. We go from the first episode where her parents are like getting upset with her for sneaking out to Avengers Con to the final episode where her mom is making her a superhero suit, which um
Which I
I
love.
think you're right in that I
I like that
it
idea.
was
It's
cute.
it's a very
I don't like
Superman
it.
idea. It's very Superman
Well,
idea.
and it's just to me, it's very like again, this is where the world really starts to feel fake to me. Is like, oh yeah, our like what 13, 14-year-old how old is Kamala Khan in this? Like
Probably
15 maybe?
14, 15
16, I don't
maybe.
know. Um yeah, we're totally fine with her like being in like, the line of fire with criminals kind of like thing that I just feel like Aunt May wasn't okay with this. And she was like Aunt May, you know what I mean? Like a much
Right.
more like progressive, I don't care if you have girlfriends alone in your room kind of mom. You know what I mean? And then like you've got these very Muslim, very traditional parents who at the beginning are that. And then by the end, through just a series of flashbacks and going to talk with mom, whether it's Kamala and her mom or Kamala's mom and her mom, now they're just cool with everything. And this really
You're right.
just like
I agree.
this, what the fuck? Like I feel like it would have been much more interesting to have Kamala Khan be this like person that is a little more like Spider-Man, a little more like I've got super crazy, like traditional, strict parents, and I've got to find a way to keep in their good graces and still do what I think is right, which is things that they would disagree with on like a fundamental level in some ways.
No,
And
I
I
mean,
think
I
I think
enjoy
that's
that better or
that's just
more.
more interesting.
It is.
That's just feels more realistic. Um and then yeah, it was I like again, it was cute that her mom makes it, but then it's just like I don't believe that these parents are real. I don't. It's like at the beginning they set up this family and it felt pretty real, pretty realistic, and by the end it's like okay, they're not real anymore. You know what I
Sure.
mean? There's Big Brother going to help you like at the high school, like like it feels like it turns into um like just like a family adventure movie. Which yeah, if that's what they're going for, that's fine. But I just think there's ways to do both, and I feel like just saying, "Oh, well," just blanket statementing, "Oh, well, this just wasn't for you," is there might be some truth to that, but I can also say like, "Well, Toy Story wasn't for me when when I was an adult and I watched that, but I loved the hell out of that." You know what I
Right.
mean? There's all these other properties and things that are like not for me, but I find a lot of enjoyment out of just because of the quality of the writing and the quality of kind of the themes and the things they're talking about. And I just think saying it wasn't for me doesn't also excuse that it could have been better. And it could have still not been me, the specific target demo, but it could have still been something I found a lot more like quality in, I guess.
No, and a few things I want to. I agree with everything you're saying. A few things that I want to point out too. This is like one of the first MCU things, period, that like I really caught myself checking my phone, and I brought up in the beginning,
Yeah.
like you might have to remind me what happens because I feel like these middle episodes with like her
Oh man.
traveling abroad, the antagonist, the guy who ends up being like the antagonist at the end, who's kind of like the
But
hot,
not really, right? But not
but not
really.
really. Like I found all that kind of confusing and not
It
interesting,
was
and
a mess.
also found like the I feel like every movie now introduces the main character, or every TV show, like the main character, but then like another side group who like already know more about her powers and her legacy than she does, that
Sure.
also have like powers similar, or like that also have
Right. Right.
a lot of, and whatever. Like I feel like we're getting a lot of that now, and like the like
Yeah.
like kind of like Shang Chi and like Eternals, and I don't know. It just feels like the universe is getting populated with a lot of characters fast, and I would have rather her been the only superpowered character and like navigating
Yeah.
this by herself versus getting like I don't know their names, I don't know the name of the group, like the secret society that was trying to
The
protect like
red something, the red daggers.
maybe yeah, but it's like how many and then also that guy dies really early on, and it's just I don't know,
Well,
it feels not
that
good.
whole no, it's not good. It's pretty cheap. Like, not I hate to say lazy because obviously someone worked hard to write that scene, but in terms of like, it's the most basic way to do exposition. Introduce a brand new character that is just there to just tell us, explain things, and then die by the end of the episode. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay, wow. You really you couldn't think of anything more clever, or you didn't have time to think of anything more clever. I don't know, but it's a mess because we get introduced to these antagonist group, the clandestines, the
Yes, thank
Jinn,
you.
I guess, whatever. And like we get introduced to them, I think, in like this episode 2, and then by the end of that episode, we find out they're evil. Just like, okay. Um, 2 episodes later, or maybe 3 episodes later, like they become not evil. Basically, the evil lady in charge decides to like decide not to be evil at the very last second when like the plot that initiated Miss Kamala going overseas to Pakistan was like the Jinn are going to open this portal to blow up the world. I've got to understand what my role in this is. And by the end of it, her role is to say, "Don't do it." And the lady's like, "Okay, I'm not going to do it anymore." And then like just closes it herself and like sacrifices herself, which is, noble and all that shit. But then it's just like,
Which also, Daniel,
this had
looked
nothing to do with Kamala.
well,
This
it also looked horrible when she become that
Oh,
like the
yes,
cleanest
yes.
skeleton of all
Oh,
time. Like I was
yeah,
like,
and
"Oh
it
my, we
it was
went from
weird.
like Indiana Jones, people melting, practical effects. Seriously, where it looks like, it
I
looks fake, but it's like interesting and badass to like I'm gonna it's like in Blade, and like I love Blade. I mean, I'm on a
yeah.
Blade kick lately. Like been doing research and watching stuff again. Like actually, I say that it's not unfair. They actually do it better, but like typically, like in a vampire movie, sometimes like shitty ones, they'll slice
Yeah,
somebody and they'll like become like a skeleton or something, and like it's kind of
sure.
hokey, but it's like a vampire thing.
Yeah.
This is like worse than that. It's like she a pure clean skeleton, and then like the crystals went around her. I'm like, man, there's just got to be more interesting. It looks so bad. Like it don't look good.
Yeah. Well, and it's just Kamala
I don't know.
has no
Right.
Kamala, the only purpose she serves, I guess, in that whole plot is that she goes back in time and therefore like is her ancestor, like she is the legend of her ancestor that was foretold. Um
Yeah. Which
But she
also brings
also
up
didn't really have any. agency in that. She got
No.
attacked and sent back in time by the bad lady. Once
Yes.
she's there, she's just like, I don't know what to do. And like most of that episode is giving us the other backstory, which was decent actually. I thought that some of that writing and like was actually better than a lot of the other show when they were
Yeah.
giving us that like backstory of the partition. Um, but then, yeah, she shows up, she comforts a little girl, and then her powers do something for her almost in a way. Um, and then she gets sent back, and then the bad lady's like, "Oh yeah, I'm not gonna do." Kamala's like, "Don't do it, it's bad." And she's like, "Oh okay, yeah, okay, I won't do it." And then she just the main plot is over at the end of episode 5. Like the reason that Kamala came to Pakistan, the reason it seemed that she had gotten these powers is now fully wrapped up, and Kamala had very little to do with it. She was kind of just a subject to fate because theoretically this has already happened, right? If we're going into like time loops again, which I'm not sure they don't even address that. Is this a multiverse thing? Is this a time travel thing? I don't know, but
Yeah.
it seems that like the only way Kamala is because she already did this in the future. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like she had to do it. It was like her destiny, or like it was just the fate destined her to go back in time and do that shit. Um, so yeah, by the end of it, it's like, well, what does Kamala overcome? I don't know. Like what has Kamala learned? That there's other people with powers in the world. It's just like you're just like stretching to even come up with like decent, like half-baked arcs for
Yeah.
our main character. And then you get the final episode where they come back and it's like, oh yeah, remember that like douchebag government sect we introduced at the end of episode 1? They're
Yeah.
back now. And it's just like that lady that they have playing the lead lady, they like, I feel so bad. It's like someone said, okay, make her look stupid. That she's a bad guy, so make her look stupid. Let's just slick her hair straight back and down like she's in an 80s movie. And then just have a big poof on top. And they're like, great. She looks like an idiot. That's exactly what we want. It's just like this is where it just starts feeling like this feels farcical. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's just
I will say,
I don't know.
I think the whimsicalness of like them doing a Home Alone situation at the high school, like I think that's fun. I think it fits in more
It's
context with episode 1,
fine.
like you kind of said. But like to have all the things we've already been through and like have death and the way it's presented, and like even the heavier episode, like the flashback time travel episode,
Yeah.
it feels like a different season of TV. It feels like they were trying to cram the season 1 idea and the season 2 idea and the two different into one thing. And
Yes.
like I feel like the high school level problems is where the show should have lived. But we should, typically there's like a fun like thing like, oh, it's the sequel. We have to go international now. We have to be like James Bond and travel to different countries and like a
Yeah.
bigger reach and like a bigger scope kind of thing. And they kind of did that in the first
Yeah.
episode. I understand the idea of like going to that culture and to like understand things, but I think it might have been smarter narratively to kinda hone that back, keep it mainly in the family in terms of, like, her home
Yes.
family, her friend family, her high school family, and then kinda and then expand beyond in season 2. Um, it just yeah, I mean, it feels like multiple different things are trying. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Yes. No,
again, this is
you're
where
right.
it's where
Absolutely right.
it's where it gets complicated too, though, like, we're 2 white guys talking about like 9/11 and like presumptions and like people being pre-screened and like and that kind of stuff. It to me, I might get in trouble for this. It felt too much like the way they kind of hammered home that idea. It didn't feel like it had no subtext or no nuance to it. You know what I'm saying? Like it felt like
No,
it was
there
just
wasn't.
shoehorned in there.
Listen, I want this. Like my ideal version of a Kamala Khan show is a Kamala Khan that's dealing with racism more often than she did in this.
Right.
Like she deals with racism from the bad government people, and then they're called damage control. What the fuck? Um,
Well, to be
like
fair,
that's the only.
they've been
Go
around for
ahead.
a while, and they're even in like
Okay,
Spider-Man: Homecoming. That's the group of people that
sure, it's the
are.
same guy that's in it. The same guy that's in both shows. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, he's in No Way Home, but I'm
But
just saying it's the same group that
that's true.
Tony Stark puts together to basically clean up, you know, messes, right?
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, um, But yeah, like it's like I want a show that's dealing with this like post 9/11 Muslim racism that is very present in America, and I don't feel like this show showed that at all. I think this showed is like, well, it's we're making the show for Americans, but it's about Muslim people, but it's predominantly for Americans. I mean, like the majority of people that watch this were probably white Americans, just in terms of demographics and how many people like watch Marvel shows. And so it felt like they were like, well, let's have like this weird branch of the government be racist, but like that's like the extent of racism we'll show because we don't want to offend other people that don't want to think America's got racism problems or something. I don't know. Like it just
Yeah.
like I felt like they should
No,
have leaned
you
harder into
hit the
that
nail
stuff
on the
in a
head
way that
right there. The idea is that Disney is making things that are trying to appeal to everybody, but then at the same time, it appeals to no one because of that. And
yes.
I say that it's got a
And
98%
maybe
Rotten
it is
Tomatoes, but I also feel like here I go, I'm gonna get in trouble. I feel like sometimes these
yeah.
things are getting passes and they're getting good
Mhm.
reviews because they're tackling these things in such a small way that feels like, oh, they're doing such a good job. We're gonna give them a pat on the back. It's like, what would have been
Listen,
fucking
it's a
metal,
thing of like
Daniel?
go ahead.
Here's what would
Go
have been
ahead.
metal if they opened up on like kind of like how like a family, maybe her parents, and they're watching the news, and then 9/11 happens, and
Hell yeah.
she hasn't been born yet, and it's like they're like, "Oh, fuck,
Or she's
what's
like 2
happening?"
years old or yeah, what yeah,
Yeah,
she's
or
not born
whatever.
probably.
That's
Um
fucking metal, and, like, that's ballsy as fuck to do that.
Yes, I agree. I think you lean harder into that. Show it, but show it like reality. Again, this is
Exactly.
where I feel like we're getting this Disney Channel version of everything, which has not been the way the MCU has been up to this point. Yes, a little bit, right? Like we've always gotten a little bit of like, well, everything works out in the end for the good guys. But like that's always going to happen in comic book stuff, unless you're like the one movie of Infinity War. But like, um, it still had this feeling of like reality. It still had this feeling of like governments getting
Yeah.
pissed off at these superpowered humans and being like, you're killing people. We're putting you under control. Or Sam Wilson dealing with like active racism, like that's going on right in front of him. And the best they've done of this whole show is doing like when they pulled the old black Captain America from the 40s or 50s, whatever that I'm blanking on his name from Cap or
Yeah,
Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but
sure.
like that and his like rage against like the systems and against the injustice, like that felt like much more reality. And like, and I just feel like this show was more about talking about the culture of Pakistani and Indian people and the partition than it was about a character named Kamala Khan. And while that is somewhat commendable because it's like you're trying in some ways you can argue that um you're
Yeah,
trying to give exposure to other backgrounds or whatever. Number one, you completely fail the main character the show is about. Like I feel bad for Kamala Khan. I don't think she was given much room to succeed in this show. I know some people just love her performance. I'm not one of them. I think it comes off just too Disney Channel, too over the top, too much. I think it just doesn't feel real. She doesn't feel like a real person. Or she does feel like real people that are always faking it that I've met in real life, and that's an issue. That makes me feel like I can't connect with her. Um, but this show, the other problem is that like I don't fucking trust Disney. Are we really going to be okay with Disney being the heralds of history when it comes to these things? Because for the most part, most people are going to be like, "Oh yeah, that's what happened," and like that's the end of their like interest in the events. They're not going to go research further or whatever. Some people will, but the majority won't. And I feel like it's like, are we really going to like clap our hands because Disney, the biggest company in the world that cares about nothing but money, nothing at the end of the day, the only reason they're doing all this is because the market research says it's going to work. Market research says this is hip. It's hip to like start looking anti-racist. To look anti-racist is really hip right now. It has nothing, and by the way, that has nothing to do with whether you are actually have prejudice or racism ingrained into your ideology. You can very much just wear badges of anti-racism and completely ignore the actual underlying problems that come with your thinking and the way you kind of automatically categorize people when you come into contact with them. But yeah, it's either like it's this soapbox from the biggest billionaire company that wants to own everything, that wants to control everything, and they're soapboxing to us about racism. Disney, that goes back to their anti-Semitism of Walt Disney himself and the early like cartoons and stuff like that. They're gonna preach to us about racism. Okay, no thanks. I don't need that. I would rather get it from someone that I know isn't doing everything just to make more money off me. But for two, then you just fail the character. It's like, great, now Kamala Khan is a totem. That's what it feels like now. Kamala Khan is a totem of, hey, we're the MCU. We have people of color and important characters, but we don't develop them. Like, it's just like, yeah, great. You've got people of color on screen, and to some extent, that is valuable. But when it feels like, and this is another problem I had with The Boys, when it feels like you're throwing up these social justice topics as just set dressing to seem relevant or to seem woke, but you actually don't do anything. You don't say anything interesting. You don't investigate any of the nuance of those things. You just throw them up there as like smoke screens almost. I mean, I think you're right. I think there is a fear of criticizing the show because it will seem racist if you didn't like Kamala
I mean,
Khan or whatever. And I just think
I'm a
I
little
think that's
nervous us talking about it right now, and that's just the culture
I
we're
don't
in
give a
right now.
shit. But
I know you don't, but like,
yeah,
I mean, there's a
I
point,
get
and
it.
this, like, everything you just said will be snipped out, but what I'm fixing to say probably won't be. Seriously, we're like 10 years
Yeah,
from
yeah.
now. Let's say we are working for our overlords, Disney, which I hope we do. Disney, don't let me sway you in our conversation here.
Yeah, listen, this is not to say I don't want Disney to give me money to make movies. I do. But I also will not that doesn't make me trust them as arbiters of truth.
Right,
It's not.
exactly.
It's not no.
But like it does scare me, like even talking about this because you don't know how people are going to take this or how they're going to misconstrue it later or like how this might bite us in the ass later. It's just kind of part of the wokeism culture we're in right now. And the thing, I don't think for one second we're racist or that we're looking to not like. I mean, that's the thing. I want to love all these shows. I come in the first half of the season a little more positive, especially that first episode. I was texting you guys like, guys, I love this first episode. Like I
Yep,
like kind
yep,
of
yep.
the style and the world, and I kind of liked where they were going with
Mhm.
these things. And I like the family
Mhm.
dynamic. Um, but my big problems were, yes, it's set dressing and like it's like people are dancing around it, but they don't want to dive into it. They just want like a badge of honor almost, right? And
Yes.
it's a complicated conversation for sure. But I do want to get into also, and it tells you how much of an impact it kind of had on me. But I
Mm.
forgot that we had this big reveal at the end of the episode in which Kamala Khan
Well,
is revealed to be the MCU's first like known mutant, at least to the audience.
yeah.
And we
Yeah.
even had like
Well, it was
a take on the
go
da da
ahead.
da 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 from the '90s, which
Yeah.
seems like they're
Yeah.
going to just roll with that theme, which I'm totally down for.
I am too. Yeah, that's fine.
Fuck it, why not?
I mean, it was
But
such a throwaway scene though, right? Like it just is like,
it
"Oh,
was.
by the way. Oh, by the way." And it's just like I feel like there's a cooler way to introduce the first mutant. I mean, and I guess
I
their
agree.
thinking is like, well, not everyone's watching the show, which the viewership is numbers are poor compared to the other Marvel shows.
They are.
Um, so maybe it's not as like this isn't obviously the big X-Men reveal. Like this isn't their like,
No,
they're stepping out on stage for the first time kind of thing. It's a tease. But
it
it
did
did
get
feel just a little
tons
bit
of
like
clickbait though.
just
It got tons of press for it.
it did, and they knew that would happen, but
Yeah,
it just felt
100%.
just throw like, "Oh, yeah, by the way, I don't even remember Bruno doing, like, fucking research on her blood or genes at any point. I was like, "When did
I
that happen?"
think
I
episode
don't know.
1 or 2, again, I also don't remember most of the show already. Um, but yes, a couple things. One, making her a mutant, I'm like, whatever. She's an inhuman in the comics.
I don't care.
Apparently, the creator originally wanted
Mhm.
her to be a mutant, but for whatever reason they
I
couldn't,
saw
so
that.
they made her an
Well,
inhuman. So
I heard it was because Fox owned mutants at that time.
And they
They did
wanted
not want to give Kamala Khan to Fox. They wanted to keep her Inhuman so that Marvel could keep her in the MCU.
there you go. Smart, baby. I mean,
It
I
is
think about that
smart.
all
It
the
makes
time. Is
sense.
like how Marvel Comics is like working around this, like mainly the Spider-Man riots. Like, oh, do we make this character a
Yeah.
Spider-Man villain or whatever? That way we can keep that villain from
Right.
the future. I think about that a lot,
Yeah.
like how they've had those
Yeah.
conversations, like when it comes to creative or writing these characters. Um,
Mhm.
but so that's interesting. That's actually that does not surprise me one bit, and I don't know
No.
why I didn't think about it earlier. But yes, so I do like the idea that like it's not just the bangle, that it's like it's the like that way nobody, it's like Green Lantern, a thing about used
Yeah.
to in the
Yeah,
comics.
yeah,
Green
yeah. I
Lantern,
agree.
anybody could put on the ring and like you had the powers. Jeff Johns came
Right.
around and said, no, you have to have the ability to overcome great fear, which kind of like it narrowed it down. It made you have to be a little more special than everybody else. And
Yeah,
so
yeah. Yeah.
I like that. I like that little nugget where it's like, okay, the bangle only is really
I
working because
agree.
you have something special about you that's different than the rest of your family, and I think that is important because
Yes.
I think it's better. Um,
It's kind of functioning more like Mjolnir, where it's like it channels her power. It doesn't
yes,
produce her power, which I
yes,
think is, again, I agree. It's more interesting.
it is more interesting. And to speak on
And
her
let me just
power,
say,
the beginning at
okay,
the
go
end,
ahead.
the finale was fun. Like seeing her kind of do what she does in the comics more so, like her armor. That
Like
was visually
walk
like
through the, yeah, yeah.
that
I
was
agree.
cool. Like
The most
she
visual, interesting part of the show.
It was the beginning part. I mean, yeah, I felt like all that was pretty cool. I like that. Go on. What you're gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say, fuck, I lost it.
Well, and that,
Just commenting on the end there too, I do think that, like, again, throwing this other character in as the last second antagonist, the son of this other character, um, which, for one, it does that classic movie thing where Kamala's like, he's like, "What happened to my mom?" And she's like, "She died." And then there's like a 15-second pause, plenty of time for Kamala to say, "Because she sacrificed herself to save you and all of us." But she just doesn't, and waits till the final moment when the world's gonna explode or whatever oh, by the way, she didn't just die. She was a good guy. It's just like, okay, fucking hell. Like that feels like that's just, to me, that's lazy. You know
it
what I
is.
mean? Like that's it's creating conflict out of nowhere for no reason other than string along the conflict. Make it
Yeah.
string them along. Make like
In
keep them
in
on the
episode
hook.
in episode two, whenever he was introduced, I immediately thought, oh, this guy's a bad guy. Like he's gonna be like the fake love interest.
Yeah,
Like he's the
yeah, I
hot
did
new
too.
guy that's
I did
coming
too.
into town. And
Totally.
it would have been fine if he was the bad guy and like more revealed like he didn't know his parent, and he didn't, I guess, know his mom and them were bad. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
But they should have stuck with that and not had him like a redeemable character. And they should have had him like he is like
well,
what
and
the antithesis of her, right? His family makes him bad. Her family makes her good. Like
I guess. I mean,
I'm saying,
but at
like
the
it's
end
more
of the day,
interesting than
his
what they
family is
did.
good. His family were good people at heart. They just, I guess, had a bad week or something because
I
it
didn't
turned
say they
out
did
being
it.
good.
I didn't say they did my
Oh,
idea just now good. I'm just saying that I'm saying
well, and
that's
it's
more interesting than what we
yeah.
got. You know?
It is, and then the end when she's, like, in there and he's like, "They'll never understand us," and it's just like, "Come on, guys," like, oh, like, it just feels like the laziest way to do these kinds of themes and these kinds of topics, like,
Yeah.
I
To be
just feel like,
fair,
I mean, I know Watchmen isn't a show for kids, so there, but Watchmen is one of my favorite shows, like the HBO series that came out, I
of
think
all
in
time.
2020, 2021. That's one of my favorite superhero properties of all time. That whole fucking thing is about racism. The
Yeah.
whole show. And it is handled masterfully.
It's
Masterfully. Like,
it's
it
kind of
actually has
crazy.
nuance and context, and it's saying something interesting about these things. It's not just saying these people bad, these people good, man. Like, it's just like that is that if we're gonna do racism, if we're gonna do, xenophobia or these other kind of, like, nationalisms, whatever, then do it right. Do it like Watchmen. I know, like, I get it. Watchmen had asses and dicks and, like, things that you can't have in a show for kids, but none of that had any importance to, like, what the show was talking about or how it handled those themes. And I think, in a world where Watchmen exists, when Kamala Khan tries to handle racism like this, it just feels like, man, Just don't even try. If this is how you're gonna, if this is the effort you're gonna put in for it, just do something else.
I do agree. There's two things I want to say. This first one, a really
Hmm.
small little thing, and then we're done. We got to wrap it up. The first thing is, after the first thing I did after this show ended, like the credits rolled,
Hmm.
and we'll talk about
Hmm.
the after credit scene here in 1 second. That's the last thing we'll talk about. But I immediately went to Falcon Winter Soldier, and I watched again the like a good chunk of the last episode because
Okay.
I am feeling this way of like I need to like find things about this phase that I am enjoying and like seeing Sam become Cap. Um, I found
Yeah.
enjoyable, and I went back and I even watched like alternate scenes of like Iron Man 2 opening, and I started like thinking like, oh man, Iron Man 2, and I started like watching bits of that, and I'm like, man, it's just like that those first 3 phases slap, man. They slapped, as the kids would say. And, like, there was just something inherently cool about these characters, and I feel like, we gotta find our way back to that. I don't wanna spend a lot of time on that, but I just wanna put that out there in the world that, like, even Iron Man 1 is, like, 7 years after 9/11, and we were dealing with the government and, like, selling weapons to people overseas and,
Yes.
like, the presumptions
Yes.
of, like, who the bad guys are. It's like, actually, it's I'm saying, like, that's
Yes.
more
Absolutely.
interesting than what we got in Miss Marvel, in my opinion. And that was, like, a very
100%.
nuanced it was more nuanced and, like, not even about it wasn't even really about that, but that was in there, like,
I
embedded a
agree.
little bit in the movie, you know?
And I think, at the end of the day, I feel like because I agree with you. I do think, even back then, like by the time Iron Man 2 and 3 were coming out, I was a little like not as like locked in. It wasn't until Avengers 1 came out that like reignited my kind of passion for the MCU and my interest in it. And
Yeah.
then the movies that came after that, like Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, like these movies that just started expanding the universe in these really interesting ways and just good movies, right? Like just good,
Yeah.
like the Winter Soldier, still probably the best like just on its own movie that the MCU has made. Uh,
Yeah, it
like
is.
I love
Yeah, it
Infinity War and
is.
Endgame, but you can't watch one without the other. And like, Winter Soldier just stands on its own, and it's just
I can watch that
it's a
fucking thing
badass espionage movie.
any time of the
Full
day,
stop.
baby. Yeah, that thing's amazing.
Seriously. But I guess and so I do think there is, for me at least, some nostalgia glasses looking back at some of that. But at
Sure.
the same time, I think it was much more focused what the MCU was doing there. It was doing much less, probably by like half or like a quarter of
It
the
was
amount of
a
production
quarter,
that they're
yeah.
doing now.
A quarter, yeah.
And yet that obviously was working, but like they were taking more time for each thing. They were really thinking it through. They were really planning it out. They were really finding clever ways to do things. And I think right now it just feels like they're just shot. It's kind of like they're shotgunning at the wall, like seeing what hits. Let's just throw
Yeah, they are.
10, 5 or 6 new shows and movies at everyone per year. And some of them will hit, Eternals or other things, and then some of them will like be huge hits like Moon Knight or No Way Home or like whatever. But I do feel like it's just we're at a difficult point where they're trying to do a lot more than they've ever done. We're also at this point where they're trying to plant a lot of seeds in a lot of different places for wherever this phase is going. And I think it will feel better once we kind of know what is the next Avengers threat. What is Loki from Avengers 1 coming? And there's a lot of potential rumors, hints that maybe that's Doctor Doom. And I think that for one would very fucking excite me. And I'd be like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready again. I'm ready to get hurt again. But it's like, I think we're just at this weird limbo state where we kind of know where it's going, but we kind of don't. Not everything is just like hitting at A+ levels. There's some just expansion happening within the production of everything. That's just, we're having to pull our talented people in multiple other directions, so they don't have as much time to focus on things, I guess. But
I I
um
I do feel like a couple things. I feel like we
yeah.
are gonna there are things to look forward to. I mean,
Hmm,
even looking at Phase
100%.
4, like, I feel like part of it is since we are getting these things that aren't hitting as well with us, it's like since it hasn't happened before, it's kinda like the prequels in Star Wars, like, it's like, "Oh, like,
Oh
this
yeah.
is like what things
Sure.
could be when they're not like 100% amazing, like we thought they like rose-colored glasses, like we
Right.
thought the originals were, right? But
Yeah. Right.
I still really loved Moon Knight, even though it does have issues, but like it's pretty fucking solid
I
in my
agree.
opinion. I loved Loki
It
watching it.
is.
I loved WandaVision watching it. I enjoyed Falcon,
Yep.
even though Falcon has a lot of issues, particularly in the middle, and it does stumble
Yes.
some in the race stuff.
Yes.
But I still loved watching Sam and Bucky. I love Shang-Chi, watching it. It
Yes.
also has issues, but I loved it. No Way Home, fucking banger. Like, there's things in Doctor Strange I love, even though that movie was
Yes.
disappointing. Same thing with Thor. There's
Yes.
things in Thor I and really enjoyed and had fun with, even though it's ultimately disappointing. The
Mhm.
universe is still, even Miss Marvel, I still, like you said in the very beginning, you said it's fine. It's still fine. We're just not, we're
Yeah.
getting so much now. It's not like we took, I feel like we tore it to shreds, but it is fine.
We did a bit. But I think it's like it's this thing of like I don't know. I feel like there's almost more to talk about when something is middling than when it is like just complete trash. You know what I mean? When you get something that's just like, oh, this show
Yeah.
sucked, or
Yes and
this
no.
season was awful. It's more like you're right. It's fun to like, but I feel like this show deserves a lot of criticism. I think
It
because
does.
it's trying to do a lot, and I think it deserves as much criticism as we've aimed at anything else Marvel has done. And I think
Yes.
it's that is doing it its justice. That is actually treating the characters and the topics as equals. Is when we're willing to tear this movie apart and dissect it just as hard as we do with Eternals or
Or Thor, Love and
Doctor
Thunder,
Strange or
which is like
Thor. You
the
know,
most
like
safe movie of all time, or trying to
and
be.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know if Thor: Love and Thunder was much better than this. I would have a hard time deciding which one's on top of the other when
Oh,
it comes to Marvel and Thor: Love
for
and Thunder.
me,
I mean,
Thor, just for the fact that
basically just
I
because
like
of
Thor.
Bale,
Well, I just
but
like
maybe
Thor
just because
better
of Christian Bale's performance.
than Miss Marvel, maybe. And I mean, like
Yeah, but
another
his
conversation,
performance, he was the most forgettable Thor I've ever had in a movie. I feel like for me,
maybe.
um,
Yeah, I was
but all
talking
that to
to
say is
someone last
like,
night about it actually.
go
But
ahead.
I one thing I want to do, I mentioned this to I think on Two for One Joe the other day. One thing at the end of the year, I want us to come up with our top. We'll do a whole podcast on it. Our top
100%.
5 favorite MCU moments this year. And like I can already tell
Sure,
you right now, like one of mine is Zombie Strange. Even though that movie didn't hit all
sure,
the places I wanted to hit, Zombie Strange fucking rules. And like stuff like that. I
true.
want to point out things that are like, hey, this is pretty cool. Not because I want us to like I want us to stay
Yeah,
positive, but also because there are cool things in the MCU, and those should be celebrated. And but also the MCU
yes,
should be criticized when they're not doing what they're doing, which fucking pains me to say.
yes.
Last thing I want to say, Daniel,
It's
or
okay. Go ahead. Go
because
ahead.
we got to wrap this up, is
Agreed.
the tag at the end, Miss the Marvels. We had Carol Danvers
Yep.
appear in her bedroom, right? It seemed like the bangle is somehow cosmically connected to her, and she was swapped
Yep.
out, right? It wasn't like an actual transformation, more so a teleportation. Question
Yes.
is really, that didn't really give us much to go on, but are you excited to see the Marvels? We have Photon, Monica Rambeau, Captain Marvel, and now Miss Marvel all in one movie. Does that feel like it's big
I,
enough to get your excitement?
I'm excited for Monica Rambeau. I could care less. Honestly, if it was just a Monica Rambeau movie, I'd prefer it. If it was like
Me
just the other
too.
two characters are there for setup or to show up at the end and help, and this is just Monica Rambeau, that she to me is the best actress. At least she has given the best performance out of any of them
Yes.
in her limited time in WandaVision. Um, yeah, I want more of her. She's super badass too. Like I feel like Brie Larson's badassery comes off a little too much like she's like
Try
fronting
hard.
it,
Try
like
hard.
this, like I'm not actually badass, but I'm supposed to be, so I'm gonna act like I am. But that's not how like actual badasses don't have to feel like they have to act badass all the time. They just are what they
They
are,
just
kind of
are
thing. And I feel like
badasses.
that's Monica Rambeau. That's what I get from Monica Rambeau is this like don't fuck with me because I'll fuck you up kind of like energy,
Right.
and that's like yes, that's what I want. And so I'm excited for Monica Rambeau. Can't wait for her. I am apprehensive at best about the other two characters.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I say that makes me feel better about the movie is the fact that we are getting a tie from WandaVision, Captain Marvel, and Miss Marvel into one movie. So it feels like
Sure.
that's a small point in the MCU where like these Phase 4 things are converging, right? And
Yeah,
so
I
I
agree.
feel like that will make the universe
It,
feel smaller, which is kind of a weird thing that I want right now. I want the universe to
yeah,
feel a little smaller. And I think that that's my only point
sure.
of like happiness here. Even though I do like Monica Rambeau, I'm not like if someone said you could have this movie versus some other movie, I would be like probably the other movie. But out
Yeah,
of those three characters, I do care about her the most. And
yeah.
so I guess I feel the same way as you do too. I'm curious. This weekend will be a big one. We'll probably talk more
Mm,
when She-Hulk comes out. We'll probably talk more about Marvel then, and maybe some of these announcements. Of course, Two for One Joe will also be talking about them on Monday. But we'll probably get a little more direction. We'll probably get a little more teases for. We've already got some hints of like what the names of certain movies could be, like The Blade, which is a weird title, The Mutants,
I agree.
I think D Blade is kind of weird. Hopefully we'll get some like stuff information there. Probably stuff on Absolute Black Panther Wakanda Forever, on She Hulk. We've already shot
Yep.
Secret Invasion. We'll probably get some of these things right. Loki season 2. They'll probably have a sizzle reel for that. They've been
Sure.
shooting that for a couple weeks now. So like things are happening. Ant Man the Wasp will absolutely probably see Kang for the first time. Probably like a concept art or
Mm,
something of him. I
mm-mm-mm.
mean, we'll probably get a lot of these little teases, teeing up, potentially where the universe is going.
Guardians 3, maybe something.
100%.
They're already
The movie's already
done.
been shot, and probably more
Yeah.
so than that, the Guardians Christmas special will be shown first. Probably
Yeah, you're right. You're
they
right.
shot that. They already shot that as well. We might get some information on Werewolves by Night and whether Moon Knight or Blade's going to be in that as well. Probably stuff like that. Like the universe
Do
is
we
starting
know
to.
Werewolves by Night is happening? No, that's
We do know
confirmed.
what's happening. Michael Giacchino, who's the composer for Batman and some other great things, he's a great composer.
Mm.
He is directing Werewolf by Night. It's a Halloween special this year. No, I'm not sure if they've shot it or not. I don't think they've shot it yet, but
It's coming out this year?
it's supposed to. So I'm not sure if they've shot it or not. But it's like a Halloween special, so like probably like an hour long or something. I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
Special.
probably.
They've never done that before. Anyway, I feels like things or movies and things are happening that might
Mhm.
start converging on themselves a little bit. Like the most interesting
Yeah.
thing about the Eternals to me was Dane Whitman's The Black Knight, and like seeing that potentially in Blade is
Yes.
exciting. And anyway, Daniel, how can our
Yes.
listeners write into us?
Listeners, you can write into bit.ly/2for1mail. Let us know what you thought of Miss Marvel. Were we off the mark here? Let us know. Were we too critical? Were we not critical enough? Let us know. bit.ly/2for1mail.
And if you can't hit up our Bitly, you can always hit us up in the comment section below, youtube.com/241 Studios, the best place to consume the content. That's where the podcast goes up first. Right now, we're recording live, actually. I haven't even checked if people are commenting on it. Nope, no comments. So there
Oh
you go.
no. Okay, good. Good, good, good.
Thank God, I guess. Anyway, guys, hit that
We
subscribe and
weren't
that like
ignoring
button.
anyone.
It helps people find us. It helps people consume more of our content. Of course, we can make more content for you. We're 126 in with no super big base. So like, I'm not sure it's going to stop us, even if we don't get commenters and subscribers. But
Oh
hey,
no, baby. We're here. We're not stopping until we get to 1,000,000 episodes. Mark it down. Write it
damn,
down.
I'm not sure we can live that long. But my name is Donovan
Science will
Thompson.
will catch up. My name's Daniel Wingfield.
I hope so. And we have spoken.